everyone, welcome to the last day of Bookmas, and today I want to talk about my top 10 books that I read in 2022 that fit into like the kind of sci-fi, fantasy, mythology type categories. Yesterday I posted the ones that are more realistic, so like my romances and nonfiction and classics. The first one I want to talk about is the only sci-fi on this list, and that is The Last Quintista by Donna Barbara Higuera. And this is where a asteroid is coming to destroy Earth, and so there are people being sent on spaceships off to a different planet to continue the human race, and we're following a girl whose family is chosen to be on the spaceship, and they're supposed to be asleep for a really long time, and then there are people that'll be running the spaceship, and they're like, generations will keep things running while everybody else is asleep so that they will wake up when they arrive at the new planet. But when she wakes up, it turns out things did not go as planned while everybody was asleep. So it's kind of feeling like a dystopian, post-apocalyptic kind of story. I really loved the main character in this one. I just found her very fascinating to follow. A lot of times in like a middle grade novel, sometimes when a kid is like kind of saving the day, they have the ability to do things or have the knowledge of stuff that you wouldn't expect like a 12-year-old to have. And so it's a little unrealistic, but in this one, you get around that by the fact that they are like fed information while they're asleep, like their brains are still processing information. And so it makes sense that she has all the knowledge to like save everyone as a 12-year-old. So it like gets around kind of some of the problems that I have with other ones that follow this trope. And I also really like that she loves folklore. It's like one of her main passions, like folklore and mythology. And so she talks about a lot of that and her own like stories that her grandmother taught her. And I just thought it was beautifully written and an interesting sci-fi story. And then next we have one that is a horror book that kind of is like horror, fantasy, gothic type genres, and that's What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. And this one is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, and it kind of takes that basic story and extended it out more, so we get more into the character work and what's actually going on with this family. We are following a main character who is visiting the house of Usher, and the Usher siblings were childhood friends of the main character, and when they arrive there, things are definitely not okay. Both siblings seem, very ill, especially the sister looks close to death, and this creepy house and everything just has a very unsettling feeling to it. And I just love the atmosphere of this book. I like that it takes this very short story and extends it out until it has the same feeling as the original Poe story, in my opinion, kind of the like unsettling feeling of like something is very wrong here, but like gives it more explanation. I liked the whole explanation and the ending and how everything came together, and I also really enjoyed following our main character as well. And I think that T. Kingfisher just does a great job of writing characters and dialogue, and really enjoy this one. Next, we're moving into fantasy, which is the bulk of this video. And so I have Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko, which is the last and final book in a fantasy duology. This one's a hard one to explain because it's a very different type of world, but we are following a kingdom basically where the like person, the leader of the kingdom, I think it's called an emperor, brings in these people that are part of like his council, and he like connects with them. It's called Ray Bear, the first one. So like he shares his ray with these people, and they're like physically and like mentally connected to him through the ray. And so they all are kind of like forming the leadership of this kingdom. And so we are following a woman in the first novel who is trying to become one of the Ray Bearers. And so I can't really like say what happens in the second book because a lot of things go on in the first book. And I just loved the world building in this, like that whole thing of like being connected to a person, like being able to like talk through telepathically with the person that you're connected to, not being able to physically be away from them. And then also just like there's a lot of political machinations in this. The characters are great. I love our main character. She definitely has flaws, and like, so she's not like the perfect kind of chosen one character. And I just really enjoyed almost everything about this series. I read this second one with my friend Kara from Wild Book Garden, and we just kept like, you know, talking back and forth and being like, I love this aspect of the story. I love this aspect of the world. I really enjoy this character interaction. And so there was just like so much about this one that I absolutely loved. Next we have Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. And this was actually a reread this year. I had originally read it in 2021, and then I forgot to do a best of, you know, fantasy. I did like part of my best of list last year, but I didn't do my favorite fantasy. So it works out that I reread it this year, so I can put it on my favorite list this year. And this is a book about a girl who, her brother has gone missing, and she wants to find out where he is. And then she one night gets a message from her brother, and he turned out to be part of this secret organization, this secret bureau. And so this is kind of like Men in Black, but like the middle grade version of that. So like you're going to like a school to become part of this agency that deals with supernatural creatures and supernatural beings and anything related to the supernatural world. And so it has that like almost like magic school type setting. And I really liked the incorporation of all the kind of supernatural beings, and how the bureau is protecting the supernatural world while keeping it secret from humans. I really liked following our main character Amari and her like drive to find her brother, and just like everything about this first installment in the series I really enjoyed. The next couple are categorized probably as fantasy, but also could be categorized as mythology. And next I have Elektra by Jennifer Saint. And this is a retelling of kind of like the Battle of Troy or the Iliad, but like it's following different women that are related to that Greek myth. And so we have like Elektra, who is the daughter of Agamemnon, who is the leader for the Greeks in the Trojan War. And we also have his wife, Clytemnestra, that we are following. And then we are following the sister of Hector and Paris, who are Trojans. And we're following each of these three women who are not actually in the battle. So it's like, you know, in the epic, we following usually the men that were at war. We're seeing the women that are either back at home or are living in a war-torn city, and kind of their perspective on everything that's going on. This has a lot of like trauma in it. And I think it's used in a way that kind of shows what happens to women during war and all those kind of situations, like what the women have to go through. And definitely family trauma and like the cycle of family trauma as it is passed on. And I just really liked this one, even though it was hard at sometimes to read. I really enjoy Jennifer Saint's writing, and am looking forward to the next like mythological retelling that she writes from a woman's point of view. And then next we have Heroes, the Greek Myths Reimagined by Stephen Fry. And he's got this series of books. This is the second one. So the first one is called Mythos, and then that was just like basically an overview of like the Greek gods and goddesses, the whole pantheon. And this one is focused on the Greek heroes. So that would be like, you know, Jason and the Argonauts, or Hercules, Heracles, however you want to call him, and a lot of different of the heroes. And I just really, really appreciate these books. I really like them, especially listening to them, because Stephen Fry narrates them himself, and he's just a really great narrator. And I just think he makes these myths really interesting to read. I mean, they're interesting stories to begin with, but, you know, bringing them and like compiling them again and retelling them. I really enjoy revisiting these myths through his books. And then the last 4 books that I want to talk about are all books that I read with my daughter. It turned out that quite a good majority of my 5-star reads were books I had read with her as part of homeschool. We have been doing a lot of like mythology books or fantasy books that we are reading together, both as part of homeschool, and then just also some of them are just for fun as part of the family. And I have just really enjoyed a lot of the books we've read together. So one I liked that we read recently together was Arabian Nights by Anna Milbourne. This is the Usborne illustrated version, and this one is definitely targeted for a child audience. So I'm not sure if I just read it by myself it would be on the favorites list, but reading this with my daughter and having her experience the 1001 Nights for the first time, and kind of the adventure in these stories, but then also like seeing Scheherazade like saving herself over and over again, and her cleverness in that. And I just thought this was so much fun to read with her. And it's just the reason why I love reading mythology based books with her, how like invested she gets in the stories, and how these are timeless stories that, you know, were written so long ago but can still be compelling to people in modern day. And then next is one that we read, my husband, me, and my daughter together. Usually my daughter and I just read the like mythology books and things on our own, but my husband wanted to read this one with us, which is not mythology based. It was just a fantasy book we wanted to read together as a family. My younger daughter is still not ready to read these longer books together, so we do this after she goes to bed. And we read together The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. And we're not reading all of the Narnia books with her because some of them I've been reading through them, and some of them I haven't appreciated as much as others. But this first one, we just really loved as a family reading this one together. The like magical world, and just like this whole portal of the, you know, the kids going into Narnia and experiencing it for the first time. And she just was fascinated with this world and what was happening. You know, I've obviously read this book before and seen movies and like know a lot about the world, and I just seeing it through her eyes breathe new life into the story, made it show why it has been around for so long and why it is still one that people love. And then next we read When the Sea Turned to Silver by Grace Lynn. We actually read a couple Grace Lynn books this year. We read Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, and then this one, which is kind of a sequel to Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. Like, I think you would appreciate it more if you read Where the Mountain Meets the Moon first. It kind of has some of the same characters, but several years later. So I would recommend reading them in order, even though I think on Goodreads it doesn't really say that they're part of the same series. And this one was just a lot of fun. We are following a girl who lives with her grandmother, and her grandmother is kind of called the storyteller for their village, and then somebody kidnaps her grandmother, and so our main character needs to go, and she's never been one that is really like the daring one. She's never had a lot of courage. She's always just kind of been, you know, the kid that like stays at home and just does what she, you know, keeps her head down and does what she needs to do. And so she has to go off, you know, and save her grandmother and go through all these adventures. And it was really fun to follow her, and fun to like all the way Grace Lynn combines like mythology into her book. She puts in Chinese folk tales into her stories, and so there are sections that are actually like folk tales she's inserted, but then they all like link together to the main overall story she's writing. So I love her writing. We really enjoy reading these out loud, and I hope that Grace Lynn continues to write more of these type books. She has 3 out right now that follow the same format, and so far my daughter and I have loved reading all of them together. And then the last book on this list is actually a whole series. This year we read together, my daughter and I listened to the R.O. Shaw series by Roshni Chokshi. My cat is just like all over the place. And this is a fantasy series that is based off of Hindu mythology. And in this, we are following a girl named R.O. Shaw, who is kind of a little bit of an outcast at her school. A lot of her classmates call her a liar because she exaggerates about a lot of things. And some of those kids that kind of bully her show up at her house one day. Her house is in, like, she lives on the top of this museum that her mom runs that has like Indian artifacts in it. And these kids from school show up one day, and she is saying that this lamp that is in the museum is cursed, and you know, if you rub it, then something bad will happen, and all the kids dare her to do it because they don't believe her. And then when she does, everything, you know, a lot of things go on. So it all stems from there, and she finds out some things about her past and her dad that she never knew. And yeah, she goes on this big adventure, and then obviously it's a 5-book series. So a lot of things happen, and we read all 5 books, and I haven't really like marathoned a series like this in a while. Like we read them back to back to back, and I just really loved that for this. Both reading it with my daughter and connecting over how much we were enjoying the story, but then also really loving these characters. Like all of the main characters in this, I just absolutely loved and just couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next to them. It does kind of build, so like we might only meet like 2 of the characters in the first book, but then we start adding these main characters. By the end, we have like a core set of these friends working together on these adventures, and I just really appreciate all of their dynamics. I loved all the mythology in here, and yeah, it was just a super fun book to read, both with my daughter, and I think I would have enjoyed it as well, just myself reading it, because I just had a really great time following this whole story. And that's it for all of the favorite books that I read in 2022. I hope you enjoyed all these like end of year videos where I talked about the books I read, but then also a view into all the things that I want to read and focus on in 2023. If you missed any of my Bookmas videos, I will link the playlist down below, and I will see you next time. Bye.